Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. How are you all doing? Let me know how your weekend went. I know I didn't hop in last week. Sorry about that. So I'm doing it today on a Tuesday. I'd love to know if you're here watching. So send me a comment. I don't know that I can see you quite yet, but I'll be able to see your comments. And yeah, let me know that you're here, whether you're watching the replay or live. So let's get into it. Today, I'll be talking to you about resilience. And well, before we get into that, maybe I'll just share a little bit about what's been going on over here. So, my mom has been visiting, which is really nice because, as you know, I may know, I'm at my mother-in-law's house right now up north, northern Ontario, and so we haven't been able to see my parents in quite a while. So, we were all excited to see my mom. The kids especially were excited to see their nana. And unfortunately, my dad couldn't make it because he is a farmer and it's his busy season. So he and my uncle own a perennial flower business, the family business together. And it's called Bud Gardens. So my maiden name is Bud. And people know Bud Gardens as Buds or Bud Gardens. And then they know that the plants, they love buying from Bud Gardens because the plants are super strong and healthy. So the way that my dad and uncle source the seeds and the way they plant, they grow the plants and take care of the plants, it essentially, once they get into the hands of customers, the customers know that they're going to be strong. So I'm sharing this with you because today we are talking about resilience, and this is very applicable. So the definition of resilience is the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. So as I mentioned, Bud Gardens plants are known to be resilient. They'll survive in all kinds of weather throughout the summer, and then even through our cold, harsh Canadian winters. So as long as they get that good start that I mentioned, and then as long as the customers plant them roots deep in good soil, and they choose a sunny spot for the sun-loving plants and a shady spot for the shade lovers, everything should be good. And if we're talking about physical resilience of the body, it's the body's ability to adapt to challenges, to maintain stamina and strength, and to recover quickly and efficiently. So challenges can be any of those things we've talked about before, any of those stressors. It could be an illness, an accident, poor diet, exposure to chemicals. So it's important to keep our resilience up. It's important to keep our resilience strong and to be able to bounce back from these things. So at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a few action tasks so that you can get working on raising your own resilience. So I'm going to introduce myself again for anyone who doesn't know me. I'm Julie Gravel. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist and functional nutrition educator and the founder of the Migraine Resilience Method. So I help women essentially optimize their health and raise their resilience through natural methods so that they can reduce the frequency and severity of their migraine attacks. So a personal story here. Another personal story. When I was 11, I broke my femur. So it was a pretty big deal. It's the biggest bone in your body. I was in the hospital for quite a while in traction, just over 3.5 weeks. So leg up in the air, couldn't move, just lying in bed for 3.5 weeks as an 11-year-old, which was kind of fine for me because as an introvert, I was okay just reading books all day and playing some video games, and then, chatting with visitors here and there. But basically it was hard all the same. And when I got out of the hospital, they put a cast on me and it went all the way up to the middle of my chest. So, it was awkward and it sucked. But, we were still able to go on our family vacation. We were still able to do most of the things we had planned. So we went to Kentucky in our motorhome. We, were able to I was able to, in a lie down wheelchair and then on crutches, I was able to do most of the things. Like we even, visited the caves. I had to go in the wheelchair accessible caves, which my dad was okay with because he has a bit of claustrophobia. And, I had to, ride in the buggy behind the horse instead of on the horse, that kind of thing. But we made it work. And because I was in good health, I healed, and I didn't have too much trouble, with that. There was the recovery, the physio, and all that, but I healed, and I was a child, so I know, children are typically pretty resilient, and unfortunately not so much all the time anymore these days. But I hadn't had any. I was pretty healthy. I kept myself healthy. I was active, and so I was able to bounce back. But if I hadn't been, I may have, gotten sicknesses on top of having a broken leg. I may not have dealt well with it. I may have, felt emotionally and physically different, and I might have gotten sick with something else at the same time. So this is where resilience is important all the way through life and for many different reasons. So just giving that example as, something that can happen that we may suffer through or be worse off going through if we don't have that resilience. So to be clear, raising resilience isn't all about avoiding things. It's not about avoiding our risks and our stressors, because they're necessary to achieve our goals. We talked about this in another live, but moderate amounts of stress is good. The failures and falls can actually help us build that resilience. They're necessary. But we definitely want to be doing everything in our power to improve our ability to bounce back after a trauma or an injury or a sickness. So, otherwise we start to feel the effects of those stressors more intensely, more often, and they may even result in more health issues. So if we had one already, like migraine disease, for example, then we may find ourselves dealing with a cardiovascular issue or autoimmune disease. It's our body's way of basically screaming at us to change something, that it needs help, that it's not getting the support it needs. It's getting overwhelmed, basically. So the way that I see it, and the way that my mentors have taught me about chronic disease especially, is that, a diagnosis or a symptom is just a downstream result of an upstream imbalance. So before we even get a diagnosis, we often have symptoms that we've been ignoring or, masking with Band-Aid solutions like meds or treatments, even if they're natural ones. We're trying to cover them up to make ourselves feel more comfortable. So often by the time we have a diagnosis, those upstream imbalances have been happening for quite some time, years even. Western medicine is limited in that regard. So the tests that when we go to our regular doctor, the tests will flag the diseased state or something close to it, but it won't necessarily indicate when you're on your way there. They'll say there's nothing to worry about yet. And then all of a sudden you go 1 year and bam, they tell you that, I'm sorry, you have cancer or you have heart disease or you have diabetes, and now you need to take these medications or have this surgery or have this treatment. So we're led to believe that there was, nothing wrong up to that point, and also nothing we could have done up to that point. And so those subtle signs and symptoms, we're told that they weren't related. If ever we did question them or had some concern, it's nothing to worry about as long as the tests are okay. But I feel like this kind of reactionary approach, it's not right. It doesn't really sit well with me. So maybe let me know how you feel about that. So have you, ever had a time where you were concerned with something and you're told it's not really anything, don't worry about it. Maybe just take this medication or, just get more rest or, eat better, like very general suggestions, but basically brushing it off. So that's discouraging to think that maybe there's something you could have done before, getting to such an extreme state of sickness. And I wouldn't be telling you about my opinion on this or thoughts on this if I didn't think there was a better way or didn't believe there was more control that we had over it. And it starts with something as simple as learning how to pay attention to the subtle signs that our systems are in need of support and actually taking them seriously and then doing something about it. Because it's much easier to improve health in the stages before you get to that diagnosis state. So raising resilience by doing what we can to help our body maintain balance is what we want. And I'll give you an analogy. Think of leaves and flowers on a plant as the signs, symptoms, and diagnosis. And then the roots, which feed the rest of the plant, keeping the leaves and flowers beautiful, as being things like our genetics and inflammation and digestion. So then think of the soil or the terrain that feeds the roots as being all of things that you can do, that we can do. It's the foods we consume, what we're exposed to, our lifestyle, our habits. So when we look at it this way, you can see how putting focus on the terrain or that soil makes so much sense. Please let me know if this resonates with you, if you agree with this in the comments. So tending to the plant's terrain is the weeding the garden, watering the soil when it hasn't rained for a while, and adding extra nutrients to the soil if the tree growing nearby is, sucking them all, using them all up. So this makes a difference in the health of the whole plant. Its ability to fend off predators, for example, like insects and fungus. And then tending to our terrain, our body's terrain, is addressing key areas like sleep, nutrition, stress, movement, mindset, and relationships. This keeps our stress barrel drained, and it helps our body to maintain balance and ultimately prevents the signs, symptoms, and disease from setting in. So those of us with migraines need to do this in a strategic way. For us, raising resilience equates to raising our migraine threshold. And raising our migraine threshold means that we're reducing the ability for triggers to initiate a migraine attack. And it includes even those annoying, uncontrollable, or non-controllable triggers that some of us get every single time they come across our path, or just sometimes, but things like weather and bright lights and loud noises and smells. It makes us more resilient to being triggered by those. So now, speaking of how the body's main job is to maintain balance, here are a few examples of what those mechanisms were actually built for. Before modern day and human-derived stressors added burden to them, our body has to put effort in to maintain balance when we haven't eaten in a while. The hormone adrenaline releases glucose from stores and basically it releases it into our body so that we don't faint. When we've eaten enough, the hormone leptin actually gets released to tell our brain we're full so that we know to stop eating. When a virus gets in, our immune system launches an attack so the virus can't overtake our body. So there are many more examples than this, but when combined with the modern day stressors, the amount of resources and energy required to maintain balance can become too much. So even with good food and supplementation, at a certain point, there's no keeping up. Symptoms and the disease set in, and then as the indication that the body is struggling to maintain its homeostasis. So the best way forward is to identify the processes that are struggling and what's interfering, and then support them. And we know that there are root causes for your condition, even if there are no root causes for the condition, being migraine disease. So this means that people arrive at the same condition for different reasons. And because of the approach I teach in the migraine resilience method, we don't need fancy testing or certainty around which of the roots need attention. We simply address the terrain, and we can be confident that the roots will be impacted. So we do consider research on migraine and the common deficiencies and food triggers and health issues, etc. But because we're a bio-individual, it's equally, if not more important, to learn how to actually track, assess, and take action for our own situation. So you learn the skills needed to feel and be more in control of your health. So to conclude, here I'll get around to the 3 things that you can start doing to raise your resilience right now. So number 1 is eliminate these 4 food additives. They're common migraine triggers that are in no way good for anyone. So the first one is aspartame. It's an artificial sweetener used in many foods and beverages, including diet sodas. And it's thought to affect the levels of excitatory neurotransmitters in the brain, including glutamate. So the next one is MSG. I'm sure we're all familiar with monosodium glutamate. We might relate it to be something that's often comes in Chinese food, but it's also found in many packaged foods and canned soups and vegetables, and it's there to enhance flavor. It's very, very it's a very, very strong flavor. So even just a little bit on your, like the tiniest bit will have a huge impact, and it actually changes our taste buds, and then we become almost desensitized to other flavors. So something that we definitely want to avoid, and it's suspected that the processed glutamic acid in MSG may overexcite brain cells in people with a sensitivity. So the next one is sulfites. It's a common preservative used in food and present in fermented beverages and wine. So this can cause blood vessels to dilate. And when blood vessels dilate quickly, like this is when we get the fluid leaking out, and we have, our pain. Our pain goes up because the nerve endings get agitated. So the last one I'll talk about right now is nitrates, which are used to enhance foods and enhance foods and preserve foods, like preserve the basically like meats, like pepperoni and ham and bacon. So, let me know if you still consume some of these things. I know many of us have tried to cut these things out. We're kind of aware, but maybe there are, places you haven't been to paying attention, and you know that you're still eating cold cuts, or you know that you're still eating some of these things, and potentially they're even triggering immediate migraine attacks for you, or it could be something that's cumulative, and if you're eating them on a daily basis or every once in a while even, it could add up. So let me know. No judgment at all. I know that I still sometimes have exposure to these things, and fortunately they don't seem to trigger anything immediately for me. However, I do try to avoid them now. So my second suggestion or tip for raising resilience is to get quality sleep. And I know that this is a tricky one for people that get migraines for a number of reasons, but there's a lot of repair that happens while you sleep. So it's an important one. And we can start with the basics. So establishing a consistent bedtime and wake time, not eating within 3 hours of sleep, and making sure that your room is dark and cool and quiet. And I have a sleep guide that I'm sure many of you have already downloaded, but I will put the link in the comments afterwards if you don't have that yet. I highly recommend it. Number 3 is to improve digestion so that you can maximize absorption of those nutrients you're taking in through your food. So digestion actually starts in the brain, and so it's important that we think about our food before eating it, and that we are sitting in like a calm environment and focused on our food, because our brain actually sends signals to the other parts of our digestive system, the chemical and mechanical parts that need to start activating and working. So if we're just wolfing down our food and we're not putting much thought into it, and we're like really stressed out when we're eating, that's not going to work well, and we're not going to make the most of what we're eating, get the most out of our food. So yeah, try to just eat in a calm environment, low stress, and then that way our food will be more fully digested, and it will put less strain on the rest of the digestive system. So let me know in the comments if you have questions about any of those 3 things. I hope that you can try them out. Let me know how it goes. And that is all I have for you today. So thank you for listening. I hope it's been helpful, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.